everyone, this is Akansha Timbre from Tech Funding News, the founder and editor-in-chief, and welcome to the brand new episode of Tech Talks with TFN. And today we are in this lovely private member club, Homegrown, which is in Marble Arch, and a lot of tech entrepreneurs come over here, and one of them who's visiting today is Dan Secretan, who is the co-founder of Xapien. Welcome, Dan, and how are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really good. It's great to be here, and as you said, beautiful club.
Yes, you liked it?
Really
I think
nice.
it was a beautiful location for us to shoot about Xapien.
Definitely.
And tell me more about your journey and everything of your entrepreneurial journey of becoming the founder of Xapien. How did everything come into place?
Sure. Well, I was actually working at a sort of tech company called Detica a while ago, which was bought by BAE Systems to spearhead their introduction into cybersecurity. And I was really working in financial crime, and my career for the last 20 years has been sort of anti-financial crime, so fighting fraud, a lot of KYC, know your customer, AML checks and things like that, helping banks really understand the people that they're doing business with. And my co-founder, Sean, was working at the same company, but he's working in the national security arena. So he was building systems and software systems to do large-scale investigations, mainly for specialist law enforcement and national security purposes. And he has some great stories from his background, like working with CEOP, the Child Online Exploitation Protection Program. And what they were doing was using internet data to help run investigations and actually have officers at school gates to apprehend potential perpetrators before anything happened. So he's got a really interesting background story. And what we did is we brought together the sort of financial crime requirement to know your customer and the enormous potential of OSINT, they call it, open source intelligence, which is internet data, to do this sort of information. So we brought that together and founded Xapien, really on the understanding that every organization needs to know who they're doing business with. And it's quite a difficult job. There's a lot of information out there, but how do you find it and distill it and make sure it's about your company that you're interested in working with? And so we harnessed what was the very beginnings of sort of AI and the technologies that were coming out at that point in time, and built a system which now does a report on any person or company in the world in minutes so that you understand who you're doing business with.
Got it. So I'm trying to link the dots over here.
Yeah.
When was it when you and your co-founders meet?
So we've been working together since about 2005, 2006, but then we founded Xapien in 2018, so we've been going about 6 years now.
Okay, that's interesting. So Xapien is into financial crime security. So could you tell us more about all the products that you're offering? Who are your customers?
Yeah, sure. So what Xapien does is it's an automated online research program. So it's as simple to use as Google. You simply say, I'm interested in this organization or this person, and it will go off and it will do that research on demand. So it will go and do corporate record checks, shareholder record checks. It will do PEPs and sanctions and watch list screening, but it will also read all of the media and content and blogs that are about whoever you're searching for, and it will stitch all of those bits together to give you a comprehensive picture. And so that's been done for many years, but by humans. So humans have often done and collated all this together. It's the task of research, and it's time consuming and it's difficult. And really it was the advent of natural language processing that allowed us to develop technologies that could read articles which are designed for humans to read. So, the Financial Times article or whatever it was, and you can read that and you can get information out of it, but you have to be able to read like a human does. You have to know who the he is and the she and the entrepreneur is referring to and what's going on in the article. And it was really that advent of NLP sort of 10 years ago that allowed us to build on that. And then really the exciting bit in the last 2 or 3 years has been large language models, and they've really allowed the whole technology sphere to jump ahead in that space.
That's interesting. That's a lot of reading and research involved, as I can understand. So how are you using AI to do the due diligence over here? And while AI is everywhere, we know that.
Yes.
But I want to understand what is the real application of AI, which Xapien is doing right now.
Yeah, And it really is that part of reading articles and reading text and information which is designed for humans to read, not for computers to read. So if you designed that information to be read by a computer, it would be sort of bullet pointed. It would say, Daniel Secretan founded Xapien, Daniel Secretan is this old, Daniel Secretan went there. And it would be really boring for humans to read it like that, but computers would love it. And really what Xapien does is it extracts the information with all those co-references, those pronouns, those other references to different people, and it understands it, and it builds a knowledge graph out of the different people, places, organizations, and what's going on in an article. And then by stitching that together with corporate records, directorships and shareholderships, and then watch lists, you can really get a full picture of the organization that you're working with. And you can start to understand much more nuanced pieces like topics that they're interested in. So, for example, environmental topics. So not just the sort of black and white checks that people have done for many years, which is sort of like, are they on a sanctions list, or are they on a sort of FBI's most wanted list or something like that? This is much more nuanced. This is like, well, I'm really interested in their association with tobacco, would say one of our customers. So a lot of our customers are charities, and they're using Xapien for donor due diligence. So before they take a large donation on, they really want to understand, who is this person or this organization giving me this money, and what does that mean? What is their reputation? Are there any associations with modern day slavery or links to China, or I don't know, cocoa plantations or health and safety incidents at their factories? And what would it mean if we then put our brand name with their brand name? What implications does that have? And that's what Xapien's really here to answer, is that reputational check. And it's like, yeah, this is fine. This organization is absolutely brilliant. They are exactly who they represent themselves as, and we can definitely work with them, and we can do that much more quickly.
Got it. So apart from charity organizations, and what are the other customers? Who are your direct customers over here, and who are you aiming at?
Yeah, so we're aiming at typically sort of compliance officers, so money laundering reporting officers, compliance officers, people who have to understand who they are onboarding in some manner. So charities onboard donors, but then commercial organizations will be onboarding suppliers, and they'll really want to know, well, who is this supplier, and what is their reputation, and does it matter to me if I put them into my supply chain? We work with large law firms as well, so they've got a regulatory obligation to do AML and KYC. They're not allowed to represent, sanctioned individuals and things like that. But they do want to go further. It's not just like, I will just accept any client. They really want to understand a bit more about that client, but they also need to do research into ultimate beneficial ownerships and a lot more sort of information like that, where they're regulated, where they are in the world and things like that. And that's again where Xapien can help them a lot. So those law firms is a sort of our second go-to-market. So we sort of decided to start in that charity sector, and that's really where we double down on. Next one is sort of the legal sector.
Got it. That's a very important sector, legal sector right now. And there's data and privacy also, which is coming in when it comes to compliance, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, data privacy is one of those really important topics and conversations when you're talking about internet data, because you want to use the internet data. You'd almost be negligent not to. If it could just be Googled instantly and found, you'd be like, oh, that'd be embarrassing to have missed it. But at the same time, you have to respect data privacy rights as well. And so it's a sort of, it's quite a fine balance, and the world is always, going between the two of just finding that, treading that line, I think, between it. And we've found our piece with it. We're very comfortable in that sort of media that is just there for publication, then we should use that and we should find it. But there are some things like social media that we shouldn't be doing because it's not proportional to the job that we're doing.
Yeah, so what I understand is you're trying to make an equilibrium over here in terms of security.
That's a really good word. Yeah, finding that equilibrium, that balance.
Thank you for that. So going back a bit, what were the early challenges for Xapien? Because AI itself, when you're using, there could be a lot of confusing subjects, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage that challenge with your softwares?
It's interesting, the word AI, isn't it? Because when we founded the company, AI was much more about image recognition and where's the football in this piece, and machine learning, sure, and things like that. But it was much more about sort of images and what you could do with it. And we were sort of talking in those days about natural language processing and NLP, and everybody was like, no, AI is much more about sort of images and things like that, but it's come on a journey, and really it's the advent of large language models that now everybody thinks of AI, they instantly think of text processing, but it really wasn't when we founded the company. And so AI is a very generic term, for computers doing higher order tasks, which we used to consider could only be done by humans. It's a broad definition. And this was very much about reading articles, extracting information, stitching it together was what we were doing. But we had lots of challenges. One of the biggest challenges for us is that we wanted to build this product, but it was quite a big product to build initially, and we couldn't sell it until we built it, and we had to raise money. We had to fund the business to do that. And so we had to convince angel investors initially that we were onto something. This really could be a truly disruptive play, that the world of checking against databases really had its day, and there was something new that we could do, and we were the people to do it. That's one of the biggest challenges. And so Sean and I were not rich individuals. We couldn't put our own money into it. We had to go out at very early days to get funding, to hire the people, to buy the compute power, to train the models, to build the product. And it was about 3 years or so before we actually had our first client. We had to build the thing, and it was a big engine that has to go and do the searching, the reading, the extraction, the understanding. Is this the right Chris Green, or is this a different Chris Green? One of the biggest challenges we had was this concept of disambiguation, because when you do internet search and you're searching for common names, maybe if you were searching for Daniel Secretan, you'd be like, I'll just take my chances in Google because it's quite an unusual name. Well, question one is, how do you know it's an unusual name? And it's just your knowledge, but we had to teach the computer what is an unusual name in every country in the world. What is unusual in Islamabad? All that sort of stuff. But if you use Chris Green, you're like, I can't just Google that. That's going to be so difficult. And getting that disambiguation to separate out the golfer in Colorado from the folk singer in Sydney to the tech entrepreneur in London, that's a really difficult challenge. And so we spent a lot of time, and a lot of our R&D budget has gone on that.
That's true. I think AI is learning every day, bit by bit, from all of us, and especially ChatGPT and text to speech, and also Search GPT came up today. What are your thoughts on that?
I saw that
Did you
Search
see
GPT
that?
last night. I thought that was really interesting. They are amazingly powerful tools, and we have always believed that search is only ever sort of stage one in any process. It's never, you don't search for the sake of searching, you're searching to get answers. And what search engines have done is just returned 1 million results for you in 0.1 of a second, and then you've got to go and read them all. And this sort of search as GPT or Perplexity is another one that does this. They're like, well, actually, no, I'm going to try and answer the question, having read all of those articles. And that's very similar to the approach we take with Xapien. It's just that we have tailored all of that to a due diligence and a compliance sort of workflow. And so we've had to integrate other data sets, like structured record sets, corporate records and things like that we have to do. And also we have to do that disambiguation process. And this is one of the challenges I think that Search GPT and Perplexity have. If you just say, well, I'm interested in Chris Green of Xapien, how does it know that the Chris Green at Call Credit is the same individual? You have to stitch that together, and you have to be able to read another article that tells you that Chris's biography somewhere that tells you that it's the same person. But the Chris Green in Colorado, who's got exactly the same date of birth, is actually a different person. And how do you know that? And that's a really big challenge, and that's going to be a challenge for those sort of search engines. But they are really much more consumer-driven things, whereas we're a B2B product that has to be accurate.
Tell me about your competitors. Who are your main competitors? In what sector, in what segment, and how are you trying to define yourself different from them?
Yeah, and I think I would probably pick some of the big organisations that do this. Would be somebody like WorldCheck. WorldCheck, who's owned by London Stock Exchange Group now, Refinitiv and World Compliance. These are sort of database checks, so they've compiled a list of sanctions and sanctioning bodies and people that are on there that you mustn't work with, and then other watch lists from regulatory bodies, bar directors and things like that. And people have used that. That's what people will rely on, and they will screen against those. What we are saying is actually we think there's a new category where, sure, that's great, you need to do that, but you can do much more if you can use internet data more fully. And the real competitor to that at the minute is just humans, it's analysts. So most of the time what we find is our clients have teams of analysts that are doing this work manually, but they've got 10 tabs open and they've got, right, I'm doing it here and I've searched that, and then, oh, he's changed his name, I need to search on that, and oh, he goes by this nickname, or he's known as BR Shetty, oh, I better search that as well. And they're having to stitch all of this together, really. And what we are doing is elevating them up to actually reading and summarizing. We're summarizing the information and letting them make a decision on whether that's within the risk appetite of the firm. Should we onboard BR Shetty in this example? And rather than them having to stitch all the corporate records together and all of his directorships from all around the world, they can now read a quick summary and they can go, yeah, okay, this is within our tolerances. So it's elevating analysts up to that level rather than being data crunching, if you like.
That's true. That makes sense totally. And I think you have done a lot of progress and development. You said you were founded in 2018, right? Since then, because I have some data with me over here that you have seen a revenue growth by over 150% from last year, and a headcount doubled to 45 employees. And then you have recently secured an 8 million Series A. Congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
And so, what is happening? What is the growth strategy over here? What is the secret mantra?
Well, as we said earlier, for the first 3 years, we were really developing the product, and it was only really in 2022 that we came out to market and launched. And so the growth has sort of been through there since then, and 150% is great. Yes, that is the revenue growth, but of course it starts on small numbers, and those big percentages are easier to achieve. But what we're finding now is that organisations are saying, "Wow, we can do so much more than we used to be able to do." So I'll give you a really great example from one of our universities in the US. They only did proper due diligence or full due diligence on donations over $5 million. A huge number, and they really wanted to bring that down to doing it over anything over $1 million, because they know that there's a risk in that category, but that it would mean multiplying the team by about 10 to do all of the due diligence on that, and they couldn't do that. But with Xapien, they can now do that. So with the same team can just cover much more. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people buying the system, using it, subscribing to it, loving it, and then just really building up their usage, and that's led to a lot of our growth. And then we're obviously growing the team because we want to invest in the next generation of technology. So at the moment we're investing in our next generation disambiguation technology. We've got some really exciting ideas about continuous monitoring, and so rather than just doing a search at a point in time, but then monitoring that ongoing. And we're also really heavily investing in our foreign language capabilities, such that we can work just as well in Chinese and Japanese and other scripts and other languages. At the moment we work in about 130 languages, but there are some Chinese and Japanese and Korean that are quite difficult for us to, and particularly matching those names to the English version. So making sure you get all the Chinese media, but you also get the English media and the Russian media and the Arabic media, where all the names, it's the same person or organization, but it's presented very differently.
Got it. So I just want to understand over here, are you in the Asian market as well, or is it the clients which come from Asian market over here and you need to read that and sort the risks?
That's exactly it. And actually right today, our clients are all here and in the US. We've got some clients in other countries, but they would really like to do some background research on their counterparties, on their third parties in Asia. And that's the bit where they find it really difficult, because they need to employ language specialists, they need to understand how the record systems work, where to find information out there. And so if Xapien can cover all of that for them, it's a hugely powerful opportunity. And then, as you imply, we could then go out and we can start selling in the Asian market as well.
Got it. So what's your expansion plan?
Our expansion plan at the moment is to focus in the UK and the US, which is where we've seen the most success to date. But what we're going to expand.
Where are your most clients from, UK or US?
Yeah, most are in the UK. So about sort of 70% are in the UK probably now, and about maybe 25% in the US, and then another 5% elsewhere. Those are the sorts of numbers. We have got clients in Australia, Canada, Singapore, New Zealand. So it is definitely, it's a very globally applicable market. Everybody needs to know their third parties. Mm-hmm. So that's where they are at the moment.
Got it. Take us through your investors. We want to know more about who invested in this latest Series A round, and what was your first investor story? You were just telling it was so challenging, and We want to hear that. I think all the founders who are listening to you would like to hear that.
Yeah, and we've gone on a quite traditional journey of angel investors to start with. So in the UK, the EIS scheme is super valuable. You know, it's been really valuable. So SEIS, obviously, then EIS investment just means that the angel investors, it de-risks their investment into what is a high-risk startup. You know, we are all high-risk startups at that stage. And so that really helped us. And what we found is that once we got one angel on, they were like, oh, well, I often invest with so-and-so and so-and-so, and they would introduce us to somebody else, and then they would then introduce us to their 5 friends. And so we found that angel investing to be super. I mean, they've been such great support to us over the years, because they've often run their own businesses in the past, and now they're interested in making some angel investments, so really great connections. And then it was last year, actually, that we took our first institutional investment, and that was from YFM Equity Partners. So they led our seed round last year, and then they've led this year our Series A fund. So we've been working with them for sort of 15 months or so now. And they're a super partner. They're a British VCT fund, and they are going from strength to strength as well. They're a good growth story in and of themselves.
That's wonderful. That's a great list of investors. And I just want to touch a section of Gen Zs right now, because Xapien is getting into that market. So what's the unique approach of Gen Z's research, searching and everything? What have you seen? And also, have you gained anything for decision making for your platform which will be helpful for them?
Yeah, so Gen Zs have grown up with the internet. They've grown up with smartphones in their pockets. They know the power of the internet. This is not, we don't need to teach them about that. They know it, all of the data that's out there. And the new entrepreneurs really are building a new business paradigm, because they know the information is out there, but they're very sort of ethically driven. They want to know about the conduct of their third parties. It's an increasingly important piece around all businesses. But I think in particular Gen Z have got this zeal to want to do ethical business, and being able to find that information out, being able to look. At the moment, traditional procurement policies said things like, oh, please give me a copy of your modern day slavery policy, and please give me a copy of your environmental policy. And people would hand those over, and that would tick the box. It's just like, what does that prove? It proves you've got a policy, but are you enacting on it? And is there a story over here that says, actually, no, your health and safety record is really terrible? And so we've seen that sort of Gen Z really want to go beyond that sort of black and white checklist. They want to know much more on topics which are much more nuanced to them. And so that availability of internet, they all know about it, and the desire to want to do that sort of ethical business is grown a lot. Yeah, those are the 2 points I'd probably pick up on that.
Okay, Dan, do you have advice for startup founders who are in AI-driven fintech startups, companies, and are looking for funding in this tough climate right now?
Yep, certainly. I think the piece of advice that I was given early on, which rankled with me a bit but is definitely true, is that you have to focus very narrowly on the problem that you're solving and not building tech for the sake of tech. I think one of the risks today, particularly with AI, is you can see the excitement around AI, and you can build something quite quickly, and you can put something together and it can do something really exciting. But is there a problem for it in the world? What problem are you going to solve, and who's going to buy it? That's not a new piece of advice. People have been saying that for years, but it's really worthwhile bearing in mind. And the second piece is just that focus around, get uncomfortably narrow in terms of what you are going to go after. So in the example of Xapien, we looked at it and we said, well, every company in the world needs to know their third parties. Everybody needs to know who they're doing business with. And that's true. But if we were going to be successful, we had to be very specific in one very narrow market. And so we decided, after having looked at lots of markets, that we were going to go after UK universities in donations due diligence. And some people looked at us and they're like, you're crazy. Like, well, there's no money in charities and universities. Like, that's not going to be a business. But actually what it allowed us to do is just really tailor into who we were selling to. So we could do search engine optimization, we could go to the right conferences, we could write the right blogs, we could write the right articles, we could just really nail that. We knew exactly who we were looking for, each organization who was going to buy this. And we could get the whole product just sang to that one use case. And yeah, it was uncomfortably narrow, but from there we've then grown out. And from there we managed to get funding on the back of it, because we were like, look, there's a business here. People are prepared to pay for it, and they're prepared to evangelize about it. And from that point, we can get funding, which allows us to do another market and another market. So we will be that thing that I always had in my mind, which is you don't do any business without Xapiening somebody. We'll get there, but we just need to. And my advice to anybody would be to really focus very specifically, uncomfortably specifically on who is really going to buy that.
That's true. The right research is important, and focusing on what you're doing is also important. And also, Dan, talking about your team, how are you building it, and how important for you is diversity in terms of team in a fintech startup?
Yeah, it's really important. It was a challenge for us. It's always been a challenge for us. Sean and Chris and I, middle-aged white men, it was always going to be difficult for us. It's so important because the technology that we're building, we need it to work everywhere in the world. It needs to work as well in Australia, it needs to work as well in India, it needs to work well everywhere. And that diversity of thought, of experience, of test cases even, to be honest with you, of who we're going to test it on, is really super important to us. So we look for diversity in across the whole gambit, across the whole spectrum. We're looking for people who are actually just think about things and approach the world in a very different way to we would, because it just brings new ideas. Yes, I've not thought about that. Yes, absolutely, that's a great opportunity for us. So it's something that we work very hard to do. It's difficult in technology. If we advertise for, say, a C# developer or something, 9 out of the 10 applicants will be male. Then we'll get good ethnic diversity, but it's difficult for us. And so I actually do quite a lot of work with founders for schools, where I go into schools and I talk about STEM careers, and particularly into the sort of the females there, and just say what a brilliant career it is working in IT, what a wealth of opportunity you could have. You could work anywhere and be a developer, and you'll be in such big demand. So I very much encourage it, because it's too late when I'm recruiting to try and influence that. I've got 9 out of 10 CVs are male. It needs to be dealt with much earlier on.
So where is your team mostly based? Is in UK, US?
That's right. No, we're pretty much all based here in London at the moment.
Got it. And do you have any numbers on how diverse the team is, any percentage right now?
Well, I'm the oldest person in the company.
Okay.
We've got big age range diversity. I think the gender split is 60-40 male-female, so not quite as good as we'd like it to be, but we're still quite proud of having achieved that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us over here at Tech Talks with TFN with Dan from Xapien. And I will take your leave from this one now, but wait for another one. We have a very nice guest coming up. Thank you.